If you are the steadfast pillar everyone leans on when their world crumbles, yet find yourself standing alone when your own foundations shake, you are on the precipice of a profound awakening. You are about to embody the most formidable archetype Carl Jung ever illuminated. Jung meticulously documented that when empaths, after years of absorbing the burdens and anxieties of others, finally reach their breaking point, they don't descend into cruelty or indifference. Instead, they undergo an alchemical transformation, achieving what he termed shadow integration. This isn't about hardening your heart. It's about refining your spirit, becoming utterly immune to manipulation while preserving, even amplifying, your profound empathic gifts. This metamorphosis is not just powerful, it is terrifying to those who have unconsciously or consciously relied on your emotional labor. Today, we will journey through Jung's four-stage transformation, a sacred process that transmutes exhausted empaths into untouchable psychological sovereigns. We will uncover precisely why this radiant self-realization often sparks panic in others, and I will unveil the unmistakable signs that you are experiencing this magnificent and, yes, dangerous awakening right now. By the end of this exploration, you will understand why the quietest empaths often possess the most profound power, and how to safeguard your precious empathic gifts, not by shutting down, but by illuminating your own worth without sacrificing your essence for the comfort of others. Are you weary of the relentless performance, perpetually pretending to be fine while your inner world feels like it's fracturing? Are you exhausted from serving as everyone's unwavering emotional support system, only to have your own vital needs fade into oblivion? Jung's profound insights offer not just validation, but a powerful roadmap out of every frustrating moment you've ever endured. He discovered that empaths who reach their breaking point don't become heartless, they become what he called dangerously whole. Through his extensive clinical practice, Jung chronicled hundreds of cases where individuals, once emotional sponges, transformed into what he termed sovereign empaths. These weren't people who emotionally retreated or built walls. They cultivated an inner strength far more potent, and, to those who exploited them, far more threatening. You have likely been the designated emotional sanctuary, the unwavering recipient of everyone's emotional turmoil. It's a sensation akin to drowning in a vast ocean, yet everyone around you expects you to be their indestructible life raft. Jung revealed that this crucible of experience ignites shadow integration, an empowering process of embracing and reclaiming those very parts of yourself you were subtly or overtly taught to suppress or reject. Yet, Jung's most startling revelation was the profound trigger for this transformation, and it is almost certainly unfolding within you at this very moment. Here is the revolutionary truth Jung uncovered. Empaths do not become dangerous when they cease to care about others. They become truly formidable when they finally begin to care for themselves with the same boundless compassion and dedication they have always extended to everyone else. Jung meticulously identified what he termed the empathy paradox in his seminal work on individuation. He observed that individuals who score highest in empathy are also those most susceptible to severe emotional burnout, but only if they fail to cultivate robust strategies to protect their sacred energy. Jung understood that the very traits he found most despicable in others, arrogance, manipulation, cruelty, were actually veiled reflections of potentials within himself that he had yet to integrate. You've undoubtedly experienced what we call shadow projection countless times. Even if you lacked a name for it, you know that instant, inexplicable irritation someone can stir within you, that visceral reaction to certain behaviors. Your inner wisdom has been picking up on Jung's mechanism all along. Perhaps you've noticed that the people who intensely annoy you seem to share specific characteristics. Jung affirmed this. These aren't random reactions. As he wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This truth, though sometimes uncomfortable, resonates deeply. Consider the coworker who frustrates you with their manipulative strategies. You might find yourself employing similar strategic thinking in your own life, perhaps in subtler, unacknowledged ways. That friend who always steers conversations back to their own experiences. You might notice your own tendency to center discussions around your narratives. You are astute enough to recognize this pattern. The things that trigger you most intensely are not random occurrences. They are mirrors, bravely reflecting aspects of yourself that you have not yet fully embraced. Let's illuminate this with an example that might spark a vivid recognition within you. You know that individual who constantly craves attention, posting every meal online, monopolizing conversations with their problems, fishing for compliments. Your immediate reaction might be disgust, labeling it narcissistic, desperate. But Jung would invite you to ask yourself, when was the last time you shared something, hoping for validation? When did you redirect a conversation because you needed to feel heard? You've likely engaged in versions of the very behaviors that so intensely trigger you in others. Or ponder the person whose arrogance makes your blood boil. Yet, you've probably caught yourself feeling superior when you grasped something before others, or when someone made a mistake you wouldn't. You've experienced that subtle surge of feeling intellectually or morally above someone else. Jung discovered that the intensity of your reaction is directly proportional to how deeply you've buried that same trait within yourself. A mild annoyance? You've likely accepted a shared characteristic, but someone who incites rage. That is your unacknowledged shadow, demanding to be seen. This principle extends beyond mere personality quirks. Jung documented cases where people's deepest hatreds illuminated their darkest potentials. The individual who judges others for their inauthenticity is often grappling with their own veiled insincerity. The one who despises selfishness has often buried their own self-serving impulses so deeply they remain invisible. You've likely experienced this dynamic in your relationships. That ex-partner whose neediness drove you to distraction. This unveils the first profound truth Jung discovered about what we call overthinking. It is often a powerful indicator that your mind is simply too sophisticated, too expansive, for the environment in which you find yourself. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. When does the intensity of your overthinking reach its peak? Is it when you are immersed in situations that deeply clash with your core values? When you find yourself in relationships that feel disingenuous or superficial? When you are pursuing goals that, deep down, do not genuinely resonate with your soul? Here's a profound insight Jung revealed, one that mainstream psychology often hesitates to explore. Your shadow doesn't merely color your judgments, it profoundly influences your choices. Every decision you believe you're making consciously, what we call ego-driven choices, Jung demonstrated that many are, in fact, shadow-driven. That job you took because it felt right, Jung would challenge you. Was it truly right for your authentic self, or did it appeal to a part of you you'd rather not acknowledge? Jung realized that society has a profound, even vested, interest in discouraging people from thinking too deeply. Why? Because deep thinking inevitably leads to uncomfortable, paradigm-shifting questions. Questions like, why am I truly living this way? What is the authentic purpose of my life? Am I living genuinely, or am I merely performing what others expect of me? The psychological establishment of his time sought to silence Jung's questions because they fundamentally threatened the prevailing status quo. Stage 3. Integration. Consciously accepting and incorporating the shadow material, bringing it into the light of your awareness. They find justifications to express the darkness they have always carried within. You've observed this pattern yourself. Every political movement that demonizes an other, every social group that claims moral superiority while attacking its adversaries. You've seen how swiftly people unite in hatred, and your instincts told you something profoundly psychological was occurring beneath the surface. Jung confirmed your suspicions. Jung found that his overthinking was, in reality, his mind's diligent attempt to process vast amounts of unconscious material, striving to emerge into conscious awareness. The endless analysis wasn't random mental noise. It was his psyche's magnificent effort to integrate novel insights, resolve deeply ingrained internal conflicts, and forge a path toward profound meaning. This is precisely why telling someone to just stop overthinking is akin to asking them to stop breathing. You are, in essence, demanding they shut down the very intrinsic process their mind employs to make profound sense of their reality. Jung's revelation was clear. The solution to overthinking isn't to think less, but to think more effectively, more purposefully. Instead of attempting to silence this powerful mind, he learned to skillfully channel its immense analytical power toward questions that truly mattered, questions that held genuine meaning. You've witnessed this same psychological mechanism in contemporary contexts. Consider the rapid descent of online communities into viciousness. A group begins with legitimate concerns, perhaps about social justice, political corruption, or moral standards. But you've seen how these movements can morph into something entirely different. The very people who preach tolerance become violently intolerant of dissent. Those fighting for justice engage in mob harassment. The moral crusaders become the very bullies they claim to oppose. Jung predicted this pattern because he understood that when groups refuse to acknowledge their own capacity for evil, that evil doesn't simply vanish. It gets projected onto acceptable targets, often those who challenge the collective narrative. You've probably watched friends become unrecognizable when they align with certain movements. Individuals you knew as kind and reasonable, suddenly justifying cruelty because their chosen targets deserve it. In his extensive writings on individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated self, Jung meticulously documented how shadow work inevitably leads to what he termed persona collapse. When you courageously integrate your shadow, you can no longer sustain the false self, the carefully crafted facade that dictated most of your previous goals and ambitions. Consider Jung's profound distinction between persona and authentic self-motivation. The most chilling aspect Jung documented is how easily this collective shadow possession spreads through what he called psychological contagion. You've likely felt this yourself, walking into a room thick with anger and finding yourself inexplicably agitated, joining online discussions and getting swept up in outrage you didn't feel moments before, finding yourself participating in gossip despite knowing better. This is Jung's revolutionary insight. Your overthinking is not a malfunction. It is your psyche's profound and insistent voice, signaling that something crucial in your life lacks authentic, soul-nourishing meaning. Persona motivation. I need to be the best to feel valuable. Phase 1. Identify your meaning vacuum. Begin by acutely observing when your overthinking becomes most intense. Is it centered around your career, your relationships, your future aspirations, or your very identity? Your recurring overthinking patterns will serve as a powerful diagnostic tool, revealing precisely where your life is currently devoid of authentic meaning. Jung discovered that the mind only spins in frustrating circles when it's attempting to solve problems that cannot possibly be resolved within their current, often restrictive, framework. If you're relentlessly overthinking your job, it might be because you're desperately trying to extract fulfillment from work that is, at its core, unfulfilling. If you're ceaselessly analyzing your relationships, it could be that you're trying to force profound connection with individuals who are simply unable to meet your authentic needs. Jung observed that when someone stops operating from persona-driven motivation, it often subtly threatens those who are still entangled in their own elaborate persona performances. Your newfound peace, your calm authenticity, can unwittingly expose the inner chaos they are still striving to suppress. But Jung's personal journals reveal the most exquisite, beautiful aspect of this transformation. You've been taught that true passion should feel urgent, exhilarating, even a little frantic. When you deny selfish impulses, they find more insidious ways to express themselves. You are perceptive enough to have noticed this in your own life. those times when you've been too nice, only to find yourself passively aggressive later. Those moments when you've played the good person so hard that resentment has quietly built beneath the surface. You felt the tension between who you believe you should be and who you actually are. Jung treated a respected minister, known for his compassion and moral leadership. Yet, this man was plagued by dreams of committing violent acts, having illicit affairs, stealing money. The minister was horrified, convinced he was losing his mind. Jung offered him a life-altering perspective. These dreams aren't showing you who you might become, they're showing you who you already are beneath your persona. The minister's relentless goodness was, in essence, a prison. It could mean gracefully ending relationships that feel performative, and instead investing your precious energy into connections that feel truly real and nourishing. It might mean bravely expressing yourself creatively, even if you initially feel you're not good at it. The ultimate key is to shift from merely thinking about meaning to actively, passionately living meaning. What Jung realized was revolutionary. Authentic goodness is impossible without acknowledging your capacity for evil. True compassion demands accepting your potential for cruelty. Genuine honesty requires admitting your tendency to deceive. But most people never reach this profound level of self-acceptance because they are terrified of what they might uncover. You've likely questioned whether the real version of yourself is as noble as you'd like to believe. Her analytical nature, which had been spinning uselessly in the corporate hamster wheel, now had a clear, compassionate purpose. This didn't instantly resolve her job situation, but it served as a powerful revelation. Her overthinking was, in fact, her mind's profound way of screaming, "This work holds no meaning for you." Jung realized that modern society often creates these meaning vacuums and then, tragically, medicates the psychological symptoms instead of courageously addressing the root cause. You've likely felt this truth, even when it was uncomfortable. You've probably experienced moments where you've glimpsed your own capacity for thoughts and feelings that genuinely surprised you. Jung's active imagination technique simply provides a framework for what you've already been intuitively sensing, that your strongest reactions to others reveal something crucial about yourself. You are perceptive enough to have noticed that the people who trigger you most intensely aren't random. But meaning-seeking is only the initial step in this transformative journey. Jung discovered that the overthinking mind also desperately needs to be firmly grounded in the wisdom of the body. During his most intense period of psychological exploration, Jung made a startling and crucial discovery. His overthinking was at its absolute worst when he was completely disconnected from his physical self. The more he existed solely within the confines of his head, the more his thoughts spiraled uncontrollably. New motivation, a natural emergence, an organic unfolding guided by inner wisdom. Jung's daily practice was revolutionary. Instead of asking, "What should I accomplish today?" Jung learned to ask, "What is trying to emerge through me?" This radical shift from forcing to allowing became the very cornerstone of his understanding of psychological health. You've likely experienced moments where life forced you to acknowledge uncomfortable truths about yourself. Perhaps during a heated argument when someone accused you of something you knew was partially true. Perhaps in therapy when a persistent pattern became undeniable. Perhaps in moments of crisis when your usual defenses crumbled. Jung's active imagination is a courageous way to access those truths voluntarily, rather than waiting for life to compel them upon you. But Jung also issued serious warnings about this process. He documented cases where individuals engaging in shadow work without proper guidance experienced what he called inflation, where the shadow personality temporarily takes over. They might become unusually aggressive, make destructive decisions, or act completely out of character. You've probably seen this happen. People who discover their capacity for anger and become perpetually hostile. Individuals who acknowledge their selfishness and become entirely self-centered. Those who find their sexual desires and become compulsively promiscuous. Jung termed this being possessed by the shadow, When integration mistakenly becomes identification, Jung himself navigated this treacherous terrain during his confrontation with the unconscious. For months, he wrestled with violent fantasies, megalomaniac thoughts, and behaviors he scarcely recognized as his own. He wrote, "I was frequently so wrought up that I had to do certain yoga exercises to hold my emotions in check." He described periods where he felt like multiple personalities were vying for control of his consciousness. One day, he might be consumed with grandiose visions of his own importance. The next, overwhelmed by destructive impulses. Feel the gentle rhythm of your breathing. Notice the subtle temperature of your skin. Feel the reassuring presence of your feet on the ground. This isn't primarily about achieving relaxation. It is about profound integration, bringing your fragmented self back into wholeness. Pattern 1. Decreased tolerance for meaningless activity. Jung observed that integrated individuals naturally gravitated away from what he called collective thinking and activities that served only superficial social expectations rather than authentic inner expression. Their souls simply could not tolerate inauthenticity. You've probably sensed that becoming truly authentic isn't the perpetually peaceful journey most self-help books promise. Your instincts about what Jung called individuation are profoundly correct. It is, in fact, the most challenging and transformative psychological journey you can undertake. What we call the individuation crisis confirms what you've likely already suspected. Real growth often breaks you down before it rebuilds you. Stronger and more resilient, you've probably experienced moments where you questioned everything you thought you knew about yourself. Pattern 3. Natural rhythm recognition. Jung documented how individuated people began honoring their intrinsic energy cycles, their personal ebbs and flows, rather than relentlessly forcing themselves to conform to external schedules and societal expectations that drained their life force. You've likely experienced what Jung called the dark night of the soul, periods where your old identity feels utterly false, but you haven't yet discovered your authentic self. You might have labeled this as depression or an existential crisis, but Jung understood it as a necessary death of the false self to allow the true self to courageously emerge. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also cautioned that there is no coming to consciousness without pain, because becoming who you truly are often requires gracefully letting go of who you thought you were. Jung was clear that not everyone should attempt individuation. Some individuals may be too psychologically fragile. Others are too deeply invested in their persona to endure its dissolution. And some discover shadow material so profoundly disturbing that they retreat into psychological defenses rather than face the arduous path of integration. But for those who complete the process, Jung described something truly remarkable: psychological rebirth. In his writings on individuation, he consistently emphasized that this process unfolds according to the psyche's own unconscious wisdom, not the ego's impatient demands. Jung wrote that the psyche has its own intelligence and rhythm in the structure and dynamics of the psyche. He explained that forcing psychological processes often creates false solutions, superficial progress that tragically fails to address the deeper, more profound reorganization taking place beneath the surface. You are aware enough to have noticed that social platforms seem almost designed to trigger our most primitive, unintegrated reactions. Jung predicted that as societies become more complex, our shadow projections would become more sophisticated. Instead of projecting onto neighboring tribes, we now project onto political parties, social movements, entire demographics. Your unconscious is diligently processing years of integrated shadow material, a vast internal alchemy, and the clearest, most direct conduit to receiving these profound messages is through the rich tapestry of your dreams. Jung realized that overthinking frequently arises when there's a deep-seated conflict between your conscious desires and your unconscious wisdom. Your mind spins endlessly, because it's trying to force solutions that your deeper self intrinsically knows simply won't work. But your dreams, with their symbolic language, bypass this mental resistance and courageously show you what your unconscious mind actually knows about your current situation. Perhaps you've shared a post condemning someone's behavior, feeling righteously justified. Jung would gently ask, what shadow material are you projecting onto this person? What part of yourself are you trying to destroy through them? The person cancelled for being privileged becomes a repository for everyone's unacknowledged guilt about their own advantages. The individual destroyed for being fake carries the projection of everyone's inauthenticity. The figure vilified for being selfish becomes the target for everyone's disowned self-centeredness. You've seen how these collective attacks often have an almost religious fervor because they are serving a profound psychological function that often has little to do with genuine justice. You've likely noticed how social media algorithms feed you a constant stream of content about people behaving badly, videos of Karens having meltdowns, politicians saying foolish things, influencers being shallow or narcissistic. Each piece of content triggers that satisfying feeling of moral superiority. I would never act like that, you think. I'm not that selfish, ignorant, or cruel. But Jung would point out that you're being fed a steady diet of your own shadow material. If you are in what Jung might lovingly call the incubation period right now, I invite you to comment. I trust my psyche's timing, not society's timeline. Jung's clinical observations revealed that when genuine motivation finally, organically emerges post-shadow integration, it feels utterly different from anything people had experienced before. Stage 1. Document everything. Begin the powerful practice of keeping a dedicated dream journal by your bedside. Write down every single dream you remember, no matter how fragmentary, bizarre, or fleeting it may seem. Crucially, don't attempt to analyze them immediately. Just faithfully record them. Jung discovered that profound dream wisdom often emerges through the recognition of recurring patterns over time, not necessarily through the isolated interpretation of individual dreams. You've seen how quickly political discussions devolve into personal attacks, how policy disagreements transform into character assassination, how people you know to be intelligent and kind become vicious when discussing their political opponents. This isn't rational discourse. It's collective shadow projection on a massive scale. The other side becomes everything we can't accept about ourselves. If we can't acknowledge our own capacity for greed, we project it onto capitalists. If we can't face our own authoritarian impulses, we project them onto socialists. If we can't admit our own prejudices, we project them onto whoever represents the opposite political position. The actual policies often become secondary to the profound psychological function these enemies serve. Jung found that the unconscious mind frequently provides remarkably clear guidance about the very problems the conscious mind is valiantly, yet often fruitlessly, struggling to solve. Synchronistic alignment. Jung famously documented how people following authentic motivation often experience what he called meaningful coincidences. External events that seem to miraculously support their inner direction in surprising, almost magical ways. The universe conspires with your authentic path. You've watched viral outrage cycles where entire populations become possessed by the same shadow content, convinced they're fighting evil when they are, in fact, expressing it. And Jung's most disturbing, yet liberating insight. This pattern will continue until enough individuals bravely complete their own shadow integration. Because unconscious people create unconscious societies, and unconscious societies create conscious suffering. The only way to stop participating in collective shadow possession is to courageously reclaim your individual shadow. Maria from our community shared a beautiful analogy. My old motivation felt like running from a bear, pure survival energy, frantic and exhausting. My new motivation feels like walking towards a sunrise, peaceful, purposeful, nourishing. Both create movement, but one depletes you and the other fills you. In his extensive writings on individuation, Jung consistently observed that when motivation emerges from the integrated self, it doesn't require constant maintenance through willpower or external validation. You've probably already recognized that Jung's message wasn't traditionally hopeful in the superficial sense, and your instincts about that are correct. He didn't promise that shadow work would make you happy. He promised it would make you real, and you are wise enough to understand the profound difference. What we call authentic selfhood aligns with what you've likely already suspected about human nature. You are capable of both tremendous good and profound evil. You have the potential for incredible compassion and heartless cruelty. You can be wise and foolish, generous and selfish, loving and hateful sometimes within the same day. You've probably observed this complex tapestry within yourself already. You've likely noticed that people who complete shadow integration don't become better in the conventional sense. They become more human, more real, more honest about their beautiful complexity. Jung's four-phase approach to post-integration development. Jung validates what you've suspected. You are. And so is everyone else. The profound difference lies in whether you will acknowledge it and integrate it, or project it and remain controlled by it. You are intelligent enough to see which choice leads to ultimate freedom. But dreams are just one powerful avenue to access unconscious wisdom. Jung's final, profoundly practical technique involves externalizing your internal chaos through the transformative practice of active journaling. Jung made a revolutionary discovery about overthinking that forever changed his entire approach to psychology. The thoughts relentlessly spinning in your head are not meant to stay trapped there. They are meant to be externalized, carefully examined, and consciously transformed through the deliberate, potent act of writing. Because the moment you accept your full humanity, light and shadow, good and evil, beautiful and ugly, that, my friend, is the moment you become truly free.